All right, we're changing things up today. I was going to do a Alice Cooper video or possibly a Chicago video. But the reality is that the Chicago is kind of a soft rock band. Alice Cooper is more so a hard rock band. And I'm at a turning point where I kind of need to start doing the soft rock material because I've only done hard rock videos. And I basically don't have the gardens and that nature parks that I wanted to do those. Um, I only really have this like on the couch series that this video is a part of. It's usually couches in my old apartments or couch surfing. But right now I'm in a weird place because I'm visiting my parents and I'm in my old bedroom and I'm on a couch that they put in. But the thing is, it's also an art room and an exercise room. That's a painting I just did. Humble brag, not my finest work. And there's a little bookshelf. The painting's also different. They repainted it. They didn't tell me. Who cares? There's nice ginkgo bilboa trees outside. They've been there since I've been here, since I was born and raised here. Um, since they bought the house, believe it or not. Yeah, I don't know. What's there to see? I do like the painting though, and the giant TV is a little crass, but the Peloton and the painting and also my mom's paintings, which is usually what takes up this room, are pretty neat. So change of pace because I'm back home and I'm feeling homely. I'm gonna scrap Alice Cooper for later because I'm not really sure I have confidence to do that one anyway. And the Chicago one I definitely want to do in the soft rock situation, which would be in the garden somewhere, nice lush greenscape in the back. Mostly because I want to dog Chicago as not a hard rock band because I think they're sort of flimsy sometimes when it comes to maintaining that. Even if Terry Kath was a great addition, I still think they're largely a soft rock entity at this point in retrospect. But yeah, the I'm gonna do Neil Young because I remember I was sent away to a boarding school, and then when I was sent away, last place I was in California was this room, and then once I was in boarding school and far up by the Canadian border, all I did was listen to Neil Young. So this big connection to Neil Young because I was obsessed. I was madly obsessed with his music before, but then once I got sent away, I had nothing to do because I had no phone and at the school, and I was in a wilderness program with no electronics whatsoever. So once I got a CD player, and this is like 2012 or whatever. This is like when CDs are on the way out, but I got a CD player at the school, and they let me play stuff like Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and shit, John Denver, Neil Young, Allman Brothers Band, Mahavishnu Orchestra. Although I think I was more of a jazz guy then, so it was probably Wes Montgomery or someone. Django, I don't know, Django Reinhardt perhaps. A lot of things like that. Trying not to be super super basic, but still kind of basic. And anyway, and Neil Young to me represented some sort of like this transition between California and Canada because I was so close to the border up in the Idaho Panhandle. But this is the weird part is that that's the same for him. He was from Ontario in a farming community and then moved to California. And so he had this loner identity that sort of superimposed into, or I guess it's superimposed by the California sort of mild mannered, happy go lucky personality and culture. Hey, say I'm making a video. Shush, shush. All right. And yeah, the so I'm gonna do the top 10 songs. First, number 10 is "Comes a Time." "Comes a Time" to me is one of his cheesier songs. Up there bracketed with "Old Man" and "Heart of Gold" and "Ohio" and "Southern Man." It's just like mid tier greatest hits album shoe-ins. Cinnamon Girl is kind of like that, but a little bit more clever, a little more coy. But yeah, I think "Comes a Time" is the one I can tolerate the most. And so I put it right up, I'm stacking it right at the top of the list, or sorry, at the bottom of the list at number 10. It's just a charming sort of all American folksy song. It's very positive and sort of cheerful and sociable in a way that is not does not possess the self seriousness that most Neil Young songs possess. By the way, his birthday's coming up, so happy pre-birthday, early birthday to Neil, because he's a Scorpio like me. Yeah. So anyway, and we're still Libra right now. It's like October 18th, so a couple days will be Scorpio. But anyway, um, so we have that, and then we have what do we have? We have that, and then we have that, and what else is there? There's number nine, right? Number nine, I think, is like a hurricane. The reason being, like a hurricane, very intense, moody, dark song, kind of sinister. It's almost like a date rape sort of energy, but it's really, really sympathetic and emotional and sort of appealing to like the vulnerable side to us. And I think that song it's hard to listen to over and over again at at almost 30 years old. But like when I was like 16 in that boarding school, I could listen to it all the time because it was just so juice juiced up with intensity and passion and a lot of there's a lot of staleness in in music nowadays. And back then, music tended to be a little more passionate. And that song was kind of on the nose passionate, very aggressively passionate, and unashamedly passionate. So that song is sort of demented, but it's a really appealing song when you listen to it in the right space, the right mentality, with the right lens. You know, all you have to have all those things aligned. It's not just a matter of one or two. You need many factors in your favor. But it is a great song. Number eight, I would say the needle and the damage done. I learned to play it on guitar in that boarding school. Listen to all this stuff in the boarding school, but that song was a focus for me on guitar because it was really I was really sympathetic to people who were addicted to opiates at the time. Still kind of am, and I felt like I needed to sort of hallmark my sympathies some way. So I learned it, and it's got this really kind of creepy, crawly guitar melody at the beginning that kind of interweaves the song, and the lyrics are sort of sparse, but then when they do show up, they're very significant, and the story is like tells itself really quickly. Even the name of the song, the needle and the damage done, is just a story, you know, fully told right there. And the lyric, especially good lyric, is I was, lying in a burnout basement with the full moon in my eyes, hoping for a replacement when the sun burst through the sky. That to me was just like really poetic. And at the time, it was one of the most poetic lyrics I'd ever heard. And even now, it's still strong. So, uh, yeah, that's number eight is The Needle and the Damage Done. Still amazing tune. Really one of a kind. And that's just Neil Young's singer songwriting capability. That was him just on solo acoustic guitar. And he was unplugged in the 70s. You know, it's like he didn't even need a band for it. Okay, so that was eight, right? So number seven is uh I don't know. Let's say maybe like a hurricane. No, sorry. On the beach slash um, Cortez the Killer. Because I Cortez the Killer is a brilliantly elegant song. It's got a lot great imagery and its lyricism, but I find it kind of redundant thematically and sort of played out in some ways. It's kind of a dude bro song to some extent. I think it's like a Dave Matthews cover. You know, it's like sort of a played out thing. Um, but on the beach is mournful and sort of loner culture and sort of intensified and unusual, and that kind of fringe value to me is has more merit. And also the album On the Beach, which is the same album as the song, is although I do think it's the best song on the album, probably. Uh, the album cover is like The Ring, it's like the movie. It's like the Ring series where it's like a girl out in the distance with dark hair. But in this one, you just see like a painting of Neil Young, and he's dark hair and he's out in the distance and he's looking out the horizon, and there's no one on the beach except for him. He's fully clothed in like yellow suit or some such costume, and he just kind of looks, and there's like there's some humor in it, like like a there's a bunch of seats and uh, beach umbrella and stuff. It's like, I think a beach ball that's been kicked around, all that's gimmicky stuff. And the song is just sort of him being sad. From what I remember, it's just him sort of feeling like a loner, and it's very very expressive. And for the '70s, because I think it was a mid slash late '70s release, for the '70s, that album was really kind of grungy, and it was getting into sort of a grunge aesthetic and tone well before that was even really a subgenre. So hats off to Neil for that. So that's number seven. I think, yeah, number six is maybe Helpless. I think Helpless is another really. It's kind of like Comes a Time, but with a little bit more meaning and dignity. Actually, I'm gonna knock. I'm gonna keep that there. Helpless at six. But it's like a more sincere sort of action packed, concentrated form of Comes a Time, which is number 10, if you don't remember. And so at number six, Helpless is really kind of, it's kind of a friendly song, but it's also kind of a sort of bluesy, folksy song that appeals to the softer side of Neil Young's music. Um, I think, no, I wouldn't rank it higher than six, though. I think it has as low as high as I can go for it. Up at number five, so I got itchy face right now. I'm just sort of scratching everywhere. At number five, I have uh, just I'm like drawing a blank, but it was one amongst many great songs. But this one definitely I think is good for five. Oh yeah, I probably "Rockin' in the Free World," mostly because I had to play it at one point when I was learning at that boarding school. I played it on stage and I sang and did the guitar lines and did a little solo and stuff. But I felt like probably one of the worst performances you'd ever watch someone perform. It's like horrifically bad singing and playing probably, but at any rate, it holds a special place for me. And also, just the lyrics are so stark and contrasting or whatever, and they're just kind of like spare, but then they really illustrate a, a vivid picture of the disappointments of America and like the globalist corporate scheme to like undermine people and make them have low self-esteem. Really kind of hammers that in really quickly, and because it got this pounding riff, very electrified, heavy, unifying sort of vocals and overall rhythm sound, and a rhythmic song for sure. Simple chords but very rhythmic, and kind of just pounding arena rock bombast, and of course kind of like a harrowing vocal style and lyricism. Keep on Rocking in the Free World, or I guess it's called Rocking in the Free World. It's the '90s. I think it's '89 or '91 release. Definitely in his later catalog as far as his classic period's concerned. Kind of skips over the '80s for the most part. Um, I would say that is just an indelibly rich song for music fanatics, for audiophiles to learn about if they haven't. It's immensely popular, but if you don't know that song, you really should. So that would be number five. Number four, right after Keep on Rocking in the Free World, or right above it in importance for me, would be assuming this list, I can maintain like legitimacy with this list. I don't know if I'll probably like rip it apart as soon as I'm done with the video. But the song that's next up in importance for me, number 4 would be not Harvest Moon. Geez, I'm like, I knew what it was. I'm just blanking on it. I should have written a list, but I feel always like I'm using a crutch when I write lists. But I guess now the crutch is my dizzy brain. Um, hmm. Yeah, why not? We can do Hey Hey My My. Why not? Until I remember what the answer really was. Out of the blue and into the black. Better to burn out than it is to rust. Out of the blue and into the black. That song's cool. It's done with Crazy Horse, of course, and it's kind of grungy, right? It's like an Alice in Chains sort of song, but it's also Stone Temple Pilots or whatever. But it's also rather unique. Like it doesn't really sound like anyone. It sounds like Neil. So I think that song is a pretty intense song. And when you hear it like on the radio, it really is striking. You realize how striking it is. It doesn't. It's not a song that you just kind of play all the time. You kind of have to let it hit you. But when it does take you by surprise, it kind of throttles you emotionally because it's a very vulnerable, sympathetic song, empathetic. So out of the blue into the black. Hey hey my my. Or I guess it's hey hey my my out of the blue into the black. And then they coach say out of the black into the blue or whatever. So whatever. Who cares? There's two versions of it, sort of, that are well known, well documented. And then at number 3, I'm leaning towards actually like Ohio or maybe Cinnamon Girl because they are pretty good despite being overplayed and kind of insipid in like their subject matter. But um, I want to live with a cinnamon girl. I could be happy for the rest of my life. Which actually does point to my favorite album, which is Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere. It's not Harvest. Harvest is a great album, but it's not my favorite. Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere is my favorite one, personally. And it's I think Cinnamon Girl is on that. It's in the middle of the album. I don't remember if it's side A or side B, but regardless, I think it should be um, my third pick, the top 3. Because it really is like his most wholesome song, his most straight to the point, I think his most rock and roll standard kind of ballad or whatever. Now, I wouldn't even call it a ballad, but it's kind of like a ballad. It's about a man and a woman, and I think it's sort of upbeat and enriching, and so I believe that's a song that is good to promote on a YouTube channel such as this. Um, and I can't really fault it in any way, which is it tells you a lot. The story is that like, by the way, is that he went to like, like a diner at the time, and some girl, the waitress, he got like waffles or pancakes or something, and he wanted cinnamon, in addition to probably whatever else was topping it, and they didn't have cinnamon, and so he was kind of bummed out. But then the girl like ran across the fucking street to went to a grocery store, came back with cinnamon, and he was like, wow, like I need that kind of girl in my life. And so he wrote the song Cinnamon Girl, like I want to live with a cinnamon girl. But it's a weird story because she's a little subservient in that situation. It's like, but I guess the point is that she just was a very accommodating personality, very sweet, a sweetheart. So number 3. Now number 2 and number 1 are not as optimistic. Number 2 is probably Cowgirl in the Sand, off the same Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere. Or is it Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere? No, I think it's Everyone. Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere. And that's a funny one because because the cover is just like sort of like a painterly looking photo of him like leaning against a tree. And I think he's a dog with him, and it's sort of unremarkable. But it does look like the middle of nowhere. So it is, in keeping with the title. And Cowgirl in the Sand to me is a really haunting, passionate song. It's got a really tight rhythm and harmony. And it sounds deep and brooding and dark, but it's also a lot like a Sabbath song. So for the early 70s, it kind of has that early 70s like chocolatey sort of density to it that you get in like Black Sabbath, especially the stuff produced by that Patrick fellow. I forget his last name, but he produced the early Sabbath records, and so they had this really baked in, like rich sound, like textured, truffly, sort of chocolatey sound. And if that's the only way I can sort of convey it to you without you actually listening. And this album has some of this Neil Young album of all albums of all artists also has this, which is not super common, but he does have it, and he especially in Cowgirl in the Sand, I think that's the best example. But also a decent amount, noticeable amount, in the best song on the album, which is my favorite song by him ever, "Down by the River." Now that sounds like some sort of like "Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine," but it's like or like "My bunny flight over the ocean." It sounds like some like sort of shanty or like some pioneer tune, but it's actually a ballad, I should say. But it's actually a like a sort of heart wrenching like murder mystery. I mean, it's a little bit along the lines of like "Hey Joe," which is famously recorded by Jimi Hendrix. But it was written by some other guy, but Bobby some and such. But anyway, Hendrix famously recorded "Hey Joe," and if you know that song, "Down by the River" is like a way cooler version of "Hey Joe." "Hey Joe" is a cool song, but it's a very cool song. But "Down by the River" is like twice as good. It's really long. It's like 10 minutes. "Cowgirl in the Sand" is also 10 minutes, but I think it's slightly longer, and it feels like a long song. It's a little boring at first if you're not used to it. But "Down by the River" has got really emotionally dramatic lyrics, and it sort of um, conveys like a tragic uh, um, act of violence that has to be kind of brushed under the rug. And to me, the reason I like it, of course, isn't like this, bloodlust for misogyny or something. But the reason I like it is because it encapsulates an ethos of the Wild West that I think is lost on a lot of people. But to Neil Young in the early 70s, it certainly wasn't. And he was able to write a song that kind of could convey the kind of emotional reality of living out in the West, which is it's really kind of like a rough riding place where the rules sometimes don't apply all the way. And that kind of bravado that you'd get in like a movie Western, with John Wayne and, Stagecoach or Rio Bravo or whatever, The Searchers, right? So that kind of movie um, belies sort of the darker side of the West that you get in a lot of the anti-Western films, like the Clint Eastwood, the spaghetti westerns, and later films that become more popular in '80s and '90s. And in the '70s, Neil Young was playing music that was kind of leaning into that aesthetic and that sort of thematic intention. Um, and I think a lot of the tracks on Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere have an anti-Western like bona fide quality that's really obviously obvious and super discernible and just kind of definitive to it. The flip side is that obviously other albums don't necessarily have a Western quality. Like On the Beach, I don't think does, but Harvest, which is his I think top selling album and one of his most famous, has a very sort of positive, upbeat, and optimistic take on, happy go lucky take on the Wild West, sort of the pioneer culture. Now, we could pick apart like all the albums and what degree they have, Western influence. Right? I mean, Wild West influence. But at the end of the day, it's like those albums wouldn't have that many of my favorite songs on them, so I'm not going to recommend them. I mean, Rust Never Sleeps is a live album for the most part, but it's got some Wild West stuff. I mean, Crazy Horse, what's that? I don't know. What is that supposed to be? I was always surprised that Neil Young wasn't considered country music because it really is kind of a country thing. But I think it's a little too anti-establishment for country. That's the point in point of fact. And the other thing is that again he belies definition to an extent. He's neither really hard rock nor is he really soft rock. He can kind of weave between the two forms, the two durabilities or whatever textures. Anyway, that's it. I don't want to drain my battery completely. So we're at 26 minutes. I think that's pretty good for a top 10 on Neil Young. I could write a whole book on Neil Young, but no one would read it. So better make a video no one watches than the book no one reads. Save time. So I can't recap, but I will say that you'll notice that it's a smattering of different albums. There's one album, I forget the name, but I didn't mention it enough. Is It Comes a Time? There's an album that's like, it's the name, one of his hit songs has that album. The album has the same name. And I think it's like Comes a Time, or I think it is Comes a Time. It could be something else. And that album's pretty good too. But honestly, in the 70s, everything Young did was pretty good or great. And then in the 80s, I think he slowed down, probably had some personal issues from what I've read. And then in the 90s, he kind of had a resurgence. Late 80s, I should say, 90s and 90s, he had a resurgence. Then he just kind of became like this old, established rock dude after that. I hate to say it. So, salute. Hats off to you, Neil. I mean, I never had a hat in the first place, but you get the drift. But yeah, and happy birthday from Marin County, California. Your neck of the woods, I guess.